One of the more common concerns with the Sacramento Kings that I've seen this offseason since the addition of DeMar DeRozan is shot distribution. Are there enough shots to go around for the capable scorers and shooters on this roster? So let's dive into it. Let's break it down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And I'll be honest with you, I'm fired up about the amount of scorers and shooters and capable players that are on this Sacramento Kings roster. Now, I do feel that questioning if there are going to be enough shots to go around and will guys be held back or hindered because other guys just have to simply shoot more than them, I think that's a fair question to ask. And I think it's a good surface level question to ask. But when you dive into it, you will realize that from the core group of Kings, the core five of Fox, Sabonis, Monk, DeRozan, and Keegan, you will realize that the vast majority of shots are going to go to them, which is to be expected, right? That is the way that it should be. That is the same way it would be on the vast majority of teams. It does not leave a lot for the rest of the roster, but it does not mean that the rest of the roster is just going to sit there with their hands in their pockets and offensively will not have important roles to play, nor will they not have the ability to have a big offensive night or be able to get more shots or a higher volume should they have the hot hand on any given night. In fact, a strength of this Kings team, a significant strength of this Kings roster, I think, is the amount of guys with the capability to lead scoring any given night, right? We'll expect Fox to do it the vast majority of the night, DeMar DeRozan probably to be right behind him. But we could have another one of those Keegan offensive explosion nights. In fact, we're hoping to see that more. You could have Malik Monk go crazy, Domantas Sabonis go crazy. Hell, Kevin Huerter off the bench, Trey Lyles getting hot off the bench, right? There are more than enough guys on this roster that any given night could get the hot hand, to which we know that this team is unselfish enough and likes to share the basketball enough to where they will try and feed that and emphasize that and build on that. What this roster does not have is selfish players. They don't. De'Aaron is going to take the most shots out of anybody, and it's probably not going to be particularly close, even with the addition of DeMar DeRozan, for two reasons. One, De'Aaron is the top guy. That's just the way it's been here in Sacramento. And number two, we have to remember, De'Aaron is essentially on a contract year, right? If he makes an all-NBA team, he's eligible for the Supermax contract. In my opinion, the best way, the number one way that he's going to throw his name into the hat to make all-NBA again has to be with scoring the basketball. So the expectation 100% is that De'Aaron Fox is going to take the most shots for the Sacramento Kings on a nightly basis. In fact, he should. That being said, De'Aaron Fox is not the type of player to where if Malik Monk has it going, De'Aaron's going to go, you know what? No, Malik, you got to get me my shots. That's not who De'Aaron is. That's not who anybody is on this roster. We already know that we're demanding and begging Domantas Sabonis to shoot the damn ball more when Sabonis' first instinct is to try and get the ball to everybody else. So let's dive into this a little bit. Let's look at shot averages over the last couple of seasons and maybe project where or what we expect, the volume of shots we expect for the Kings going into this season. Now, also, it's important to note, shot attempt averages are not quotas, right? De'Aaron Fox averaged 20.9 field goal attempts per game last season to lead the Sacramento Kings. That was his average, not his quota. That means that De'Aaron Fox does not have to shoot the ball 20 to 21 times a game. It is not expected of him. It does not always have to happen. The flow of the game could be different. He could have a night where he needs to shoot 30 plus times. He also could have a night where he can get away with 15 or 16 because, like I said, maybe somebody else has the hot hand, or maybe teams are focusing so much on him defensively that he has a higher assist total and he's making the right pass and making the right play to find the open man and play off of what the defense is giving him. So shot attempts are not quotas. This is not a number. These aren't numbers that the guys have to reach on a nightly basis, or for some reason they failed or did not do a good job. So let's look at these shot attempt numbers. Last season, the Sacramento Kings averaged 90.9. So basically 91 shot attempts per game. That was 6th in the NBA. 5 teams shot more than the Kings did, or had more shot attempts per game than the Kings did. The Pacers are number 1. No surprise there with their offense. They averaged almost 93 shot attempts per game. The Hawks number 2 at 92.5. The Warriors number 3 at 91.6. The Wizards number 4 at 91.4. And the Rockets at 91, just barely above the Sacramento Kings. So what does that tell you? 1, there is room for the Sacramento Kings to grow. The Kings can realistically add a shot or 2, and maybe we should even expect, with the way offense is going and the pace of play, the Kings can add another couple of shot attempts per game on top of the 90.9 that they had last season. Should we expect it? I don't know, but it certainly is possible. And take this into account too. The Sacramento Kings actually shot over 2 attempts more per game last season than they did the season where they led the NBA in offense and had one of the greatest offenses in history, right? In fact, the Kings 88.2 attempts per game in the 2022-2023 season. Again, the Kings were number 1 in offense that year. That was actually 16th in the NBA. So they took the 16th most shots in the league, bottom half of the league in shot attempts. They were just so good at converting and so good at shot distribution that it didn't matter. There were 4 teams that season with 92 or more shot attempts per game. Shot attempts don't always translate to good, right? There are bad teams that shoot the most shots in the league. So more attempts isn't always a good thing. It's about being efficient with the attempts that you get. But this is all to outline that the Sacramento Kings do have the capability to shoot more and create more shots if they need to. But I don't know if they're going to need to. By the way, 39.3 of the Kings' 90.9 attempts last season were 3-point attempts. That was up from the season before by about 2 3-point attempts per game. So the increase from 2 seasons ago to last season really was just the higher volume of threes that the Sacramento Kings shot. Now, I know Mike Brown gives the Kings the green light, and 3-point shots are going to be there, and 3-point shooting is still going to be expected to be a strength of this Kings team. That being said, I know I felt that there were times last season that the Sacramento Kings shot too many threes and relied too heavily on the 3-point shot. The addition of DeMar DeRozan, I believe, will help with that. So now that we have a number in mind, right? Let's say 90.9 attempts per game. Let's look at which guys were taking those attempts. Like I said, Fox led the Kings with 20.9 attempts per game. Sabonis was second with 13. So there's a big gap between number 1 and number 2. Murray was third with 12.7. Monk was fourth at 12.4. So the Kings core 4, 20 for Fox, really 21 for Fox, 13 for Sabonis, 12.7, almost 13 for Murray, and 12.4, just over 12 for Monk attempts per game. Then you had Barnes at 8.9 attempts, Herter at 8.8, Lyles at 5.5, Mitchell at 4.5, Ellis at 4.1. That means 13.4 shots are naturally going to be freed up because Barnes and Mitchell are no longer here. Or you could take 13.4 shots from last season's total or last season's averages and go, okay, these are free agent shots. Well, we know where they're going. They're going to DeMar DeRozan, right? So DeMar DeRozan comes in. Last season, he averaged 17.2 attempts per game, which was the most on the Chicago Bulls, but still actually slightly down from the season before. And I think the expectation in Sacramento is that DeRozan isn't going to have to be the scorer that he's had to be on the Bulls and even the Spurs before that, right? DeRozan does not have to be the top scorer and the number 1 guy offensively here in Sacramento to be effective. And I think that's a good thing. That being said, of course, there are going to be nights where DeRozan's got it and Fox is feeding DeRozan, Sabonis is feeding DeRozan, and DeRozan's going to be the guy taking 20 to 25 shots, maybe even more than that. If DeRozan's cooking, of course, the Kings are going to feed him the ball. So now let's project a little bit, right? Let's assume that the Sacramento Kings don't take any more or any fewer shots next season as they did this past season, right? Let's say it stays right at that 90.9 attempts per game. How do we distribute that? Well, let's start with the core first. We'll start with De'Aaron Fox. I think let's add 1 attempt per game for De'Aaron. So he gets up to 21.9, essentially 22 attempts per game. That might be too much, but I'm adding that on with respect to what I believe Fox has to do to make an all-NBA team, which is a primary motivation of his, and get that Supermax contract. So I'm doing that respectfully. That 22 attempts for Fox might be too many. I'm doing that respectfully. Also respectfully for DeMar DeRozan, I'm leaving his attempts the same. He averaged 17.2 attempts as the number 1 guy in Chicago. So 17.2 attempts as the number 2 guy in Sacramento. Is that realistic or not? I'm not sure. Now, the Chicago Bulls didn't generate as many shots as the Sacramento Kings did last season. But I do believe it's more likely that DeRozan's shots go down than they do up. But let's just say you're grabbing DeRozan and you're plugging him in and who he's been into Sacramento, because we don't know what he looks like on this Kings team. So let's keep his 17.2 attempts per game the same. Sabonis, we want to shoot more. So I am naturally going to add 1 more attempt per game for Sabonis, up from 13 to 14 attempts per game. But if there's anybody that's going to sacrifice his shot attempts, it's going to be Domantas Sabonis, because naturally that's his game. Naturally, that's what he wants to do. But I think you and I, everybody in Sacramento is calling for Sabonis to shoot the ball more, especially with that open mid-range jumper that teams are continuing to give him in order to try and beat the DHO game. So let's say Sabonis is at 4. I'm also going to put Murray at 4 too. Murray up from 12.7 to 14. Put him up to 14. We want Murray to shoot the ball more. Keegan's going to be expected to shoot the ball more. Some people believe that the addition of DeMar DeRozan could take shots away from Keegan. I'm not of that belief, right? I don't think DeMar DeRozan being here is going to mean Keegan shoots less. In fact, maybe it helps Keegan kind of fall back more into his natural, what he brought into the league, which is kind of the catch and shoot, floor spacing, 3-point shooter. Not saying that he can completely go away from trying to attack the basket and create his own shot. The Kings still need that of him and want that from him. But I think more naturally, Keegan can fall into that or build into that. Unlike last season, where I felt like the Kings needed that of him immediately for it to be successful. And we saw him have some growing pains with that. But the Kings need Keegan Murray just needs to shoot the ball more, especially in games where he has the hot hand. He needs to be more assertive and say, give me the damn basketball. I'm hot. I need to shoot this. So I think Keegan's attempts need to go up. And then I'm leaving Malik Monk's attempts at the exact same. Not because I don't want Malik shooting more, but because if the Sacramento Kings got exactly what Malik Monk was last season again this season, whether it's as a starter or coming off the bench, then they're in fantastic shape, right? If Malik gives Sacramento more, I'm thrilled about it, but I'm not expecting it. I'm not demanding it, right? So Malik could absolutely shoot more than 12.4 attempts per game. 100% he could. But we know so much of Malik's game is not just scoring the basketball, it's also distributing and getting his teammates involved. I don't think the addition of DeMar DeRozan hurts Malik in any kind of way. It just gives Malik another partner, another guy to play off of and to feed and potentially be able to get some open shots off of as well when DeMar DeRozan draws the defensive attention that he's going to draw when he's trying to attack from the mid-range. So I'm going to leave Monk's number or shot attempts at the exact same, just because I'm okay. If Malik gives you the exact same this season as he did last season, I think you're in great shape. So that means out of your core 5 players, that's 79.5 attempts taken up by the core. That means there's only 11.4 attempts remaining for the rest of the rotation, period. right? That's not a lot. But the reality is that core five, they're going to be the guys shooting the ball and scoring the ball and taking on the majority of that load on a nightly basis. That's just the expectation. Is that frustrating for Kevin Huerter or Trey Lyles or Keon Ellis, who remain? And those are like the other three main scorers that remain in this rotation. Is that going to be frustrating for them? Maybe. But look, I look at those three guys as specialists at this point. The volume is going to go down, but your percentage is expected to stay strong, stay good, stay high. That's a lot to ask, right? Because especially for a shooter like Huerter, right? When you are a shooter, you need a rhythm, right? Having rhythm is so important to the amount of shots you go down. Now, again, there are going to be nights where Kevin Huerter, if he's got the hot hand, hell yeah, feed the man, make sure he gets more than 11 attempts just by himself. Like, there are going to be nights like that. But more often than not, Kevin Huerter's role, whether it's as the starting two guard, I don't know if that's going to be his job, or coming off the bench, whatever role Kevin's going to have, his job is going to be a specialist. So I look at those three guys, and I look at the 11.4 attempts remaining, and I look at it as either a 7-2-2 or a 6-3-2 split. One of those three guys is going to get more shots than the other two. More often than not, I think that's going to be Kevin Huerter. So Kevin gets 7, Trey and Keon get 2 a game, or Kevin gets 6, Trey gets 3, Keon gets 2. These guys are the guys that are unfortunately going to have to kind of make up for the lack of shots. That's just the reality of the situation. But if Keon Ellis only gets 2 shots per game, which, yeah, that's low. Or if Trey Lyles only gets 3 shots per game, yeah, that's low. He's got to make those shots, right? If you're on the perimeter, if you're out there being the defensive pest and specialist that you are, and you're there to space the floor, and you get 2 open looks at 3, you best be making it one of them, right? Now, I'm not expecting Keon Ellis to be a 50% three-point shooter. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're going to get limited looks, those looks are still going to be important and are still going to come in the flow of the offense. You have to hit on those looks. Now, if I were to look Keon Ellis or Trey Lyles in the eye as a head coach and say, guys, you're probably only going to get 2 or 3 shot attempts per game, I don't expect them to be thrilled with that. Let's just be honest. I don't expect them to be happy with it. But here's the reality. If they hit those 1 or 2 looks that they get, that means they're going to get more. And when they get more, okay, it's like I said, Domantas Sabonis, who's sacrificing a shot or 2. Maybe it's DeMar DeRozan, who's sacrificing a shot or 2. Malik Monk might sacrifice a shot or 2. Keegan Murray might sacrifice a shot or 2. The vast majority of the shots are going to come to this core. More often than not, you're going to need all those guys to take the most shots in order for Sacramento to be successful. But if somebody off the bench who's only expected to shoot the ball a couple times per game is hitting and is impactful, is running the floor, is doing what they need to do, they're going to get looks, and the Kings are going to distribute and share with them. So I say all that to say, I do understand the shot distribution is tight, 100%. But I don't view it as an overly negative thing. We'll have to wait and see once we see these guys actually on the floor. But at this point in time, I'm not concerned about it. I don't view it as something that's more of a negative than a positive in any kind of way for this Kings team right now. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard me talk about FanDuel a lot over the years here on Locked On Kings. It's America's #1 sportsbook, but we have a little something different for you. A really cool offer from FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. That's it. Just bet $5 on whatever you want, and you will immediately get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And it's not just, I'm just paying $5 for a 3-week trial. Oh, no. Because if you win that $5 bet, you made money and you get the 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket, which is fantastic. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. There's no contracts or anything like that. Cash in on this offer at FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook. I'm sure you've seen the videos by now, but if you haven't, Domantas Sabonis hopped on a plane and flew down to LA, DeMar DeRozan's neck of the woods, to get some work in with DeMar over a couple of days. Now, there was also a video recently of DeMar working with Juju from USC. She's an absolute superstar and future, I don't know, probably Hall of Famer, like legend in WNBA basketball. But DeMar was working out with her, and in the video, you'll see Sacramento Kings assistant coach Doug Christie is out there already working with DeMar, which I absolutely like. But DeMar or Domantas flying out to LA, I mean, it's a consistent theme with Sabonis, right? Think back to the offseason after Sabonis was traded to Sacramento. What did he do, right? He had the entire team basically over to his house in Napa to kind of bond and spend some time together. And then Sabonis has always been willing to put in individual work with different guys. And it's a quote that Kevin Herter shared with us on Media Day 2 years ago. And it's just continued to stick with me. And I know I've shared it probably a million times here on Locked On Kings. When talking about Domantas Sabonis and playing with Domantas Sabonis, Kevin basically said, like, he's the easiest guy on the planet. He's the easiest guy in the league to play with, because he wants to find you. He wants to play off of you. He wants to get you the ball where you like the ball and where you want the ball. That's the reputation that Domantas Sabonis has. So Domantas Sabonis is not just going down to get some work in and going down to hang out with DeMar DeRozan. Domantas Sabonis is intentionally, and DeRozan's doing this too, but Sabonis is intentionally spending time with DeMar to understand, get to know, and figure out, how do I complement DeMar in the best way possible? How do I get DeMar DeRozan the ball where he likes it? And the video that we saw, the one clip that we saw of them working together, the DHO game. It's a mid-range DHO that has me so freaking excited. The DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis DHO game is going to be nasty. Straight nasty. Let me break it down for you, right? It's going to be different, a little bit different than what we normally see with the DHO game, right? It's not going to be as far out on the perimeter. The Kings will typically start their DHO action pretty high up the floor, right? Pretty far away from the basket. And that's where you see a lot of the DHOs with Kevin Herter or Keegan Murray coming off the curl, and then they step into that three-point shot. For DeMar, who's less of a three-point shooter, and of course more of a mid-range merchant, that DHO game is likely going to start a little bit closer to the basket. Think about that gap of space between the top of the key, and which is that half circle above the free throw line, and the top of the three-point line, the furthest three-point shot, right? That little bit of space, that's where I expect the DeMar and Sabonis DHO game to primarily be executed out of. DeMar already needs very little space to get his looks, right? We've talked about this. We've broken this down. DeMar DeRozan does not need a lot of room to get his looks and to get his shots up. Sabonis, with his size and with the DHO game, will naturally create space for DeMar. Naturally, will give DeMar a buffer to create just a little bit of room between him and his defender to where DeMar can get that shot off, and more often than not, it's automatic. Or the DHO game will cause switches and mismatches, meaning whoever's guarding Sabonis, the big, will have to slide over to step out on DeMar. DeMar's more than capable of either going by him or getting him in the air and drawing a foul. We know he's a merchant. He's brilliant about creating contact and drawing fouls off of defenders who are physically trying to disrupt the DHO. And remember, it was physicality, what the Golden State Warriors did, trying to be physical and break up the DHO by fighting through it and pushing it around and not allowing it to get comfortable, to move. You play physical with DeMar DeRozan, he's going to bait you into fouls, and he's going to get to the line. He's going to get you in foul trouble. So that's a big addition that DeMar DeRozan brings. With the DHO game and DeMar coming off of the handoff and kind of coming off of that curl, right? Whether he's looking for his shot or trying to get downhill and get to the rim, whatever the case may be, defenders are likely going to try to step in to help. Now, this, in theory, creates a spacing issue, right? This is where the spacing concern comes to play. Well, if you're doing this DHO game at the top of the key instead of out on the perimeter, there's less room to operate, right? Isn't that a bad thing, Matt? Now defenders who are on around the perimeter can step in and try and double team or triple team DeMar and not let him get that shot off. That means that the wing 3 and corner 3 should be all day. They should be there all game, whether it's Herter in the corner or Fox on the wing or Murray in the corner on the wing, whoever. Those wing and corner 3s, in theory, should always be there because the defender is going to have to make a decision. Do I trust my defender to battle through the DHO and be able to contest DeMar DeRozan? Do I trust the big man to switch onto DeMar DeRozan and be able to stop him and cut him off without fouling? Or do I have to help on the 6-time All-Star mid-range merchant and one of the best clutch shooters in the league? Do I have to step out on him and help and make sure he doesn't get that good look? They have to make that decision in a split second. And if they make the decision to stay home, DeMar more often than not is going to make defenses pay for it. If they make the decision to come and help out, DeMar DeRozan is a more underrated passer than people give him credit for. DeMar, boom, kick out, wing 3, Keegan Murray, splash. Boom, corner 3, Kevin Herter, splash. The DHO game between Sabonis and DeRozan alone is going to open up so many avenues for different scoring opportunities for the Sacramento Kings. The fundamental primary one being DeMar DeRozan mid-range jumper. And he's, if not the best in the league, he's top 2, top 3 best in the league in those spots. Good freaking luck to everybody else. Today's episode of Locked On Kings is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Our schedules get busy, right? Even with our kids going back to school and everything, right? Kids' activities, their school, big work projects, so many things. It's easy to let our priorities slip. Even when we know something makes us happy, it's not always easy for us to find the time for it. Plus, there's the non-negotiables. Things like taking care of yourself physically, mentally, things that we need to do to fit into our schedule that aren't always easy to do it. That makes therapy and those non-negotiables more important than ever. Life can build up on us and stack up on us really, really quickly. And suddenly those little weights and little things that were bothering us that we're carrying turn into massive anchors that drag us down. No matter what you are going through, whether it's something small and minor that you think, I don't really need therapy for that, or something major where you definitely need to seek help. Regardless of what spot you're in, talking to a therapist can help you. I know from firsthand experience because it has changed my life and helped me in so many ways over the years that I have been going and seeing my therapist, TJ. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day. It's like leg day. Don't skip it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Real quick, before we wrap up, ESPN experts predicted the Western Conference standings, and the Sacramento Kings got a little bit of love. They were picked to finish 6th, so the 6th and final playoff spot. Now, here were the top 6. Thunder, 57-25 record. T-Wolves, 54-28. Mavs, 52-30. Nuggets, also 52-30. But Mavs finished in 3rd, Nuggets in 4th. Suns, 49-33. And then your Kings at 47-35. A 1-win improvement over last season. The play-in teams were the Pelicans at 46-36, only 1 win less than the Kings. The Warriors at 45-37, they're the 8th seed, 2 wins less than the Kings. The Grizzlies at 44-38, and the Rockets at 44-38. That means the Clippers and the Lakers and the Blazers and the Spurs and the Jazz were the 5 teams that were not even in the play-in picture. Here's what I think they got right: how tight the race is going to be. Right, I can absolutely see there being only a 4-game gap between a top 5 seed and the play-in spots. 100% could see that. Absolutely. In fact, I think that should be expected in the West. I also think they got the teams at the top right. Thunder, T-Wolves, Mavs, Nuggets should be top 4 in some capacity. I do think that the Kings will be closer to 50 wins than ESPN predicts here. I think you could flip-flop Sac and Phoenix pretty comfortably and put the Kings at like 49 wins or around that. Again, the Kings get to 50, which is the goal this year. Kings get to 50 wins. They're going to be firmly in the playoff picture in the West, in my opinion, regardless of how good everybody else is. But I think the Kings will be closer to 50 wins than they're predicting on this. But you know what? That's okay. They're still predicting the Sacramento Kings to be a playoff team. That is the ultimate goal at the end. In order to get there, though, just seeing this and visualizing this and seeing like their fake standings out in front of me, it made it even more crucial. Like the Lakers games, the Clippers games, the Spurs, Jazz, Blazers games, like these games, the Kings have to win games, the vast majority of those games. They just have to. They cannot afford to drop a lot of those games with how tight the race is going to be in this Western Conference. And seeing that, the difference between losing one or two of those games could be 2 spots in the standings, could be, once again, being a play-in team versus a secured playoff team. Boy, every single game in the West, I already knew it, but it just visualizes it again. Every single game in the West is going to be so unbelievably important, which is going to be fun and stressful as hell for all of us. Can't wait to get that started. Would love to hear your thoughts on the Kings shot distribution, your thoughts on DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis working together in the DHO game that they're going to have. Hey, reach out to me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.